evening. Welcome. I'm Pat Jenny. I'm president of the Salisbury Forum, and on behalf of our entire board, welcome all of you to this newly renovated auditorium here at Housatonic Valley Regional High School. We are really happy to be inaugurating this auditorium, this new space, and I think it's really appropriate that we've attracted such a large audience tonight. If you are like me, you have probably read lots of articles and listened to lots of podcasts trying to understand what happened on November 5th in American politics. It seems that there has been a dramatic rejiggering of the electorate. Yes, we are as divided as the pundits predicted. As of today, the popular vote tally shows Trump winning 50% to Kamala Harris's 48.3% of roughly 151 million votes that were cast, which was a noticeably smaller turnout than in 2020. But what is most notable is that economic status and education levels seem to affect how you are going to vote. Donald Trump has transformed the Republican Party by building a working class of all races and ethnicities to the Democrats' loss. And this evening, Kurt Andersen and William Cohan are here to discuss this seismic change, offering their informed views on what a second Trump administration will do to the American economy, our democracy, and our role in the world. This is our last program for the Salisbury Forum for 2024, and we are very busy planning next year's calendar of events. 2025 is our 20th birthday year, and we will celebrate and thank all of you at an event in September. Our first program of the new year will focus on a completely different topic from politics, and that is food. On Sunday afternoon, February 2nd, at the Colonial Theater in Canaan, we will show the film called Food and Country, which was produced by Ruth Reichel, a former editor of Gourmet Magazine and a former New York Times food critic. This film follows the stories of farmers and ranchers and chefs from the Midwest to the Bronx. After the screening, we're going to have a discussion about how the food we eat and how it is grown here, led by Rebecca Basansky, who will have a discussion with a couple of local farmers. Rebecca is the executive director of Berkshire Agricultural Ventures, whose mission is to support local farms and food businesses and build a thriving, equitable local food economy. So watch for details on our website, and if you're on our listserv, of course, you will get the invitations in January. Thanksgiving is next week, as we all know, and that means we are now officially in the season of giving. So the Salisbury Forum programs are always free and open to the public, and that's why we rely on all of your support to help bring these speakers here. Our fundraising campaign has begun, and we will be sending an email to you on Monday asking for your donations. It's really easy to make a gift anytime. You can go to any of the emails that you get from us or to our website and hit the red donate button. We don't have a staff, so our operating costs are quite modest. And thank you very much to all of those who have already contributed this year. Yes, you will still get that email on Monday. So now a few words about our speakers. Kurt Andersen is back here at the Salisbury Forum for the third time. As a writer and a radio show host, he has analyzed America for many years. Two of his best-selling books are Evil Geniuses, The Unmaking of America, A Recent History, that was published in 2020, and its 2017 companion volume called Fantasyland, How America Went Haywire, a 500-year history. He was the host and co-creator of Studio 360, the cultural magazine show produced by Public Radio International and PRX and ran for 20 years. Kurt co-founded the satirical magazine Spy, and he served as editor-in-chief of New York Magazine. Although he hails from the Midwest, Kurt has spent most of the rest of his life in New York City. He graduated from Harvard College, where he was editor of the Harvard Lampoon, and has been awarded honorary doctorates by the Rhode Island School of Design and Pratt Institute. William Cohan is a best-selling author, renowned financial journalist, and former M&A banker. His newest venture is Puck, an online publication owned and operated by the journalists themselves. It covers Wall Street, Washington, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood. After a 17-year career on Wall Street, Cohan became an author, and his books include The Last Tycoons, which is about Lazard Frères, House of Cards, about the fall of Bear Stearns, The Price of Silence, about the Duke University lacrosse scandal, and most recently, Power Failure, covering the rise and fall of General Electric. Paul grew up in Worcester, Mass, and graduated from Duke University and Columbia's Business and Journalism schools. So please join me in welcoming Kurt and Bill to the stage.
People.
It is my pleasure, our pleasure, to be with you. Whoa, I like seeing them. Tonight at the magnificent Salisbury Forum. I live not very far away in Cornwall half the time, so I guess after almost 10 years, I almost count as a quasi-local. We, like all of you, have been reading and yakking about this election for a long, long time, and I think both of us have ideas of the why it went politically the way it did. All I'll say, but tonight, it's going to be a conversation as much as an interview, I hope, although since I was assigned the interview role, I guess I will lead if we were dancing. But we will talk as we do, because Bill and I know each other well and have for a long time. But because Bill is this magnificent expert in all things financial, economic, and concerning rich people, who are the subject, by the way, of that most recent book of mine, Evil Geniuses, we will be spending a lot of time talking about that rather than, why Michigan was lost, for instance. And I just want to say one thing about the politics of it and all of the idea being certainly pumped up by the winner of this election that it's a mandate. It is not a mandate. I said it on the first day after the election when everybody was depressed, understandably, not everybody, but half the country and most of the people I knew, that 1.7% popular vote margin for those who also become president, because there are lots of people who have bigger popular vote margins than that who don't become president, like Hillary Clinton and Al Gore, for instance. But 1.5% is very low. It's among the 55 elections in which the popular vote winner has become president. This is around 45 or something like that. So it's in the lower, is that a decile? I guess that is it, or a quintile. So it's not a mandate. In my mind, and we can talk about this later, the only mandate and the only mandate of any kind is because the Democrats did so much worse in getting Democrats and Democratic voters out to vote. There is a mandate for the Democratic Party to figure out why that happened and how to fix that. There's no mandate for the Republican Party to do very much of anything, since it has no real agenda except pleasing its leader. And of course, it has the mandate that every Republican administration has, which is to keep taxes low and the standard Republican thing as it's been for more than half a century. Anyway, so Bill, we have talked about the people you write about a lot, the people on Wall Street in the financial class, the donor class in this political context, and how some of them, a few of them spectacularly, who were kind of default Democrats, kind of politically disengaged, Elon Musk until a couple of years ago. Your good friend, and I'm not saying that facetiously, your friend, maybe former friend, we'll find out, Bill Ackman, the hedge fund manager, who went from, again, as I say, being a kind of squishy default Democrat, but not really a political guy, into this full-on, Magadon. And I'm curious, why did people, that guy in particular, about whom I'd like to hear what you have to think and say, but those people in general, the people who became such vociferous Trump supporters, what got into this? It isn't just, the Democratic Party has gone left in some ways, culturally certainly, financially and economically, they're doing as well as they ever have, better. And so what caused that, do you think?
That's a loaded, big question. Let's maybe just talk about, quote unquote, my friend Bill Ackman for a moment, who is I don't know, to me, fairly well-known hedge fund manager. I've been writing about Bill Ackman since I wrote a profile about him in Vanity Fair maybe 12 years ago. Maybe some people in the audience will remember he, Hello? Oh, I'm back. There must have been a glitch. The Wi-Fi went out for a second. He had decided to short, bet against the stock of a company called Herbalife. There was a documentary film made about it, which I actually was in, and he made a big stink about it, made a big presentation about it, basically ended up losing $1 billion betting wrong, and got in a big fight with Carl Icahn, and they had a sort of a legendary feud on CNBC at around lunchtime as a result of this big short that Bill had put on against Herbalife, and I interviewed him right after he got off the air. So he was like full of beans. He was back at his office after appearing on CNBC, and it was like legends. They were like yelling at each other for 30 minutes. It's become a legendary event on Wall Street, and so I've known Bill a long time. I've seen his ups and downs. He had some spectacular losses with Herbalife, and then he lost $4 billion betting on a company called Valiant Pharmaceuticals. Usually when hedge fund managers lose $1 billion and then $4 billion, that's pretty much the end of them. But Bill is so resilient that, I don't understand quite how he did it, but he kept at it. He rebounded from that. And then, just in COVID times, and I'll tell you a little story. I was talking to him because in like February of 2020, and he had just decided that he had just come to realize that COVID was happening, was going to be a big thing, and I don't think the rest of the world woke up until March of 2020, like a month later. But Bill had already, he had done some research about in China and where this thing originated, and he bought what are called credit default swaps. He basically bought these insurance policies thinking that the bond market was going to crash and yields on bonds were going to skyrocket as everybody freaked out once they realized what was going on with this, which is exactly what happened. So he bought $27 million worth of credit default swaps, insurance policy, an insurance premium. He paid $27 million for this insurance premium, and then sold them 3 weeks later. Sold this little bet that he had made 3 weeks later for $2.5 billion. And then he took part of that winning and invested it in his stocks, that his portfolio of stocks, and made another $1 billion a week later. So I wrote a piece in Barron, said it's like the greatest trade ever. How he spent $27 million and turned it into $3.5 billion in 3 weeks. So
Let me guess. He liked you then.
He liked me. He didn't like me after the Vanity Fair article, but and we've had our ups and downs. But this is funny. Your former partner on SPY, Graydon, who of course has been incredibly generous to me, Graydon Carter, and I think still has a house in Washington, Connecticut, or maybe Roxbury, okay, nearby. So Bill hated me after I wrote that story about him, because I told this story about how he had gone on this biking out in Montauk with his other hedge fund buddies, and he thought he was like a superstar, studly guy, and what happened was he bonked, which is the word that they use for this. He couldn't keep up, and he went out really fast, and then they had to tow him back. They had to literally, his hedge fund buddies had to pick him up and put him on their back, and because he had totally spent. And so I wrote about that, which was quite embarrassing to Bill, because he thinks of himself as a master of the universe. And so he didn't like that story, but he really wanted to go to the Oscar party, okay, which of course Graydon controlled at that point, decided who went. So it was really tough for him. I was in the subway in New York, and I was going to lunch up in central Harlem, and I came out of the subway and my phone rings. It's Bill Ackman. And I hadn't talked to Bill, and since that story came out, it was probably a year had gone by. But he really wanted to go to the Oscar party that year. And so he had to call me up and beg me to call Graydon and ask for an invitation for Bill.
After he had been savaged by your piece in that magazine.
After he'd been savaged by my piece in this magazine. I mean, it was fair. It wasn't savagery. It was
okay.
But
he
it.
was not happy about it.
No, he was not flattering. But I don't really write flattering pieces about people. But that's somebody else who could do that. But so I called up Graydon. I said, Graydon, you're never going to believe this one. Bill Ackman has just called me. He really wants to go to the Oscar party. And Graydon says, should we let him go, Bill? I said, well, we had fun with him. Obviously this is a very hard call for him to make. Why don't we let him go? So why don't you call him and tell him he can go? So I called him up and told him he could go, and Bill flew across the country in his private jet and stood in the corner and watched these movie stars in his tuxedo. So I've had my ups and downs with Bill, but the last bout was how he had done this greatest trade ever. But literally, Kurt, in answer to your question, I do not understand what happened to this guy. Since basically, I think it began in October 7th of 2023, after what happened in Israel, and his second wife is Israeli, and I think this really radicalized him. As you know, he was supporting Dean Phillips, this Democratic congressman, through much of the election cycle.
But before that, though, and part of his, I don't know if it was an argument, but he was saying Joe Biden is a bad candidate. Well, he was correct about that, obviously, and
he was also saying Claudine Gay was a bad president of Harvard.
Yes, indeed.
And I don't know whether he was right about that, but that unleashed, somebody at MIT, because he was also then going to go after the MIT
right.
president. Some researcher at MIT dug up the stuff about his wife supposedly plagiarizing her MIT PhD thesis, and next thing you know, there's a Business Insider article all about that. So he literally, and if I were his wife, I would, given him his walking papers at that point. If you had just shut up about Claudine Gay, then I would not be, tabloid featured
and we all know, probably, people for October 7th was, a transformative thing in how they thought about various political things. But why would that, given this Biden administration's treatment of Israel and this war in Gaza, subsequently make you say, I'm against them, I'm for Trump? That's a kind of a non sequitur.
Yeah, it is, but a lot of people went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't understand why someone like Bill Ackman would go down that rabbit hole, but he's also big buzz with Elon Musk because he invested in his takeover of Twitter, 10 million of his own money. So and when Elon allowed for more than 240 characters, first it was 120, then it went to 240, and then you could write essays.
If you paid.
If you paid, but I mean, Bill could afford the $10 a year to get the blue check.
Well, and that's when I guess I'd probably read your piece about Bill Ackman, but he was not top of mind for me. When he started writing about
his essays,
Claudine Gay should be, kicked out of president of Harvard and the president of Penn and all that, over their lack of support for Jewish students and
or how they did not answer their congressional
didn't quash the protests and
right.
so forth. That's when I became aware of him, and mainly because he wrote these 5,000 word tweets. I didn't know there were such things as 5,000 word tweets, and I started reading them. I was supposed to be finishing a book, but I was fascinated by this guy, and I wrote a piece about him and these, and treated him as. My conceit was that he was a fictional character. He's like a Nabokov character or something, just like a completely unlikable idiot who thinks he's a glorious...
And can opine on every topic suddenly.
Well, and that's the other thing people say, and it seems so true of him and Musk, and also about politics, about their understanding and knowledge of politics, of government, of policy, of history, of culture, all these things. That, okay, they did what they did. He makes good bets on stocks, and Musk did a pretty amazing thing making an electric car company and a rocket company. Okay, but not only do they not know about these things that they are now presuming to be great, wizards of, but they're just like shockingly dumb about it as well. So is the thing that people say true in your view of, like, these people get rich in whatever way they get rich, and then they think I'm a genius about everything?
Yes, yes is the short answer. Yes, and I deal with these people all the time, and I think once you get real, FU money, I think you think that your, shit doesn't stink kind of thing, and you can opine on everything, and of course, the unlimited X landscape allows you to do that, and some people, like Bill has no, there's no carburetor on Bill's behavior. There's no, but he doesn't have board of directors. He doesn't report to anybody. He all the things that he does that I write about, are so. I mean, it's so interesting. It's like unending, fodder for me because. There's no carburetor on. He'll just do whatever he wants. Even to the point of, getting his wife attacked, bringing his new wife, which he professes to love dearly, getting her in a position where she's like caught up in the whole plagiarism thing, and buddies with Elon. I'm sure he thinks that, well, I'm worth $10 billion. Elon's worth $350 billion. We're the same. We're the same kind, and I'll just do what Elon does because I'm Bill Ackman, and I'll just go on and pontificate, and it'll be great. And I think he's also adopted something that people like Elon do as well, which is cutting out that horrible media middleman, who's distorting what we say and interpreting what we say and editing what we say and misinterpreting what we say. I don't have to deal with that Bill Cohan anymore. I'll just write my own personal essays on X, and that's me unfiltered, and it'll be great. And I'm so smart, so of course it'll be great.
Speaking of having hundreds of billions of dollars and thus FU money, as you say, Jeff Bezos, he has
Another
worth 250 or some $billion.
He's number 2.
Yeah. So why does a guy like that, but graded on the curve of Musk and Ackman, is still a good and decent and virtuous person, relatively speaking. And, he's done a great job with the Washington Post, as an owner of the Washington Post. But speaking of the Washington Post, if you have $250 billion and you don't have to kowtow to Donald Trump or please him, why do you do the thing he did, which was clearly to avoid hurting Donald Trump's feelings of for the first time in 50 years, 40 years, decide at the last minute, nah, we're not going to do an endorsement this year. Why do you do that? I mean, don't you have, I don't know, some self-dignity?
Cojones?
Yes.
Well, look, the answer that he gave was that endorsing presidential candidates is ineffectual and old-fashioned, and therefore, we're not going to do that anymore. But I think the real reason, of course, is to, as you said, to not piss off somebody who might be president of the United States. And by the way, I've got a lot of government contracts. I have my space program that Amazon, of course, has, its huge cloud business, which is, of course, the driver of the company. I own MGM, I own all sorts of other things. I employ a lot of people. I just don't want to get into, on the wrong side of the politics here. So, I mean, once upon a time when we were growing up, the publishers of these papers, prided themselves on taking sides. And of course, there's a long history of publications in this country which were incredibly partisan.
Right.
I don't know, this sort of preemptive censorship of your own self. I don't really understand it. And it happened in Los Angeles, and it happened in Washington, and it's very disturbing. But there's a lot of things disturbing about what's going on with the media today, and the way people are afraid to investigative reporting has pretty much died on the vine because people don't want to take on and investigate wealthy people who can turn around and sue them like it was nothing.
So I want to talk to him about what might happen in this administration. And I'm curious about this, well, certainly all of his cabinet appointments. And it is, he's, I mean, clown car is a metaphor, is a figure of speech. It's almost literally that this time. I mean, they don't have the big red noses and funny makeup. Well, they do have funny makeup. But
I like the Star Wars bar metaphor.
But the Treasury Secretary, it seems as though Donald Trump, for all his burn it down instinct and performative, we're going to shake everything up and turn everything upside down, he does not want the stock market to go down because of an appointment he's made of another clown to say the Treasury Secretary, or to try to fire the chairman of the Fed before his term is up. So it seems, those choices seem to be a sort of moderating influence on his erratic madness, the choosing Bobby Kennedy to be Health and Human Services Secretary, or choosing Matt Gaetz, and now Pam Bondi to be Attorney General of the United States. So, I mean, I've never been sure entirely what Treasury Secretaries do, but in his case, it's an important message to say, no, I'm not a nut when it comes to your money, rich people. Is that kind of it?
Well, of course, I can't, you've written as much as anyone, and presciently, about Donald Trump. I've written a few, before he came down the escalator, one piece in Vanity Fair about Trump University, which was a joke, right? And a piece in the Atlantic about, before he came down the escalator, about why nobody on Wall Street does business with him anymore. But I haven't been able to figure out what goes on in between his ears. So you would think that choosing the defense secretary would be, as fairly important a role as Treasury Secretary. You would think that, and yet he chose a buffoon, who we'll see how far that gets, whether that'll be the next one to go down. And then, for Secretary of State, which I also think of as a fairly important role, almost as, equally as important as Treasury Secretary, because like you, I'm not really sure what the Treasury Secretary does either, except during a crisis. Well, during a crisis, I understand what they do, but before that, they don't need, it's fairly ceremonial in many ways, although I'm sure they wouldn't think that. But you got little Marco as Secretary of State, which when it was first announced, I think it was like the first thing, right? Little Marco is the Secretary of State. I thought, oh my God, here we go. It's like here's the guy standing at the Star Wars bar already. We got but now all of a sudden he looks like now I guess if you keep going lower and lower and lower and more insane, which of course is a Donald Trump trademark. That looks like the first guy you chose. All of a sudden he's like Edward Stettinius all of a sudden. Little Marco, and plus that he's totally subservient to him because you called him Little Marco and he kept coming back for more. Right?
Well, but that's of course what that's his MO, and people talk a lot about his line of I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue that he said in 2015 when he was first running for president,
and it turned out to be true.
And I wouldn't lose any voters. It's one of those aphorisms that will go down in history, like Andy Warhol's so everybody will be famous for 15 minutes one day. But the other thing that Trump said that we didn't know, that he said back in 2005 that we didn't know about until 2016, which to me explains so much. It explains picking Matt Gaetz, picking Pete Hegseth, picking all of these Star Wars bars
characters,
clientele, is he said on that Access Hollywood tape, when you're a star, they let you do anything. You can do anything when you're a star. And he is this almost superheroic star in the political world, the political world that he controls. And it's almost about, they let me do anything, these US senators in this case, and watch it, I will.
That's why, going back to the Treasury Secretary pick, which was just announced before we came out here, that he picked this guy, Scott Bessent, who's a hedge fund guy, who's been very loyal to him. Basically until his name started getting mentioned, I'd never heard of him before, right? So it wasn't registering on my radar. But the guy who I was sort of hoping would get picked was this Mark Rowan, who, unlike Scott Bessent, doesn't look like a Treasury Secretary, happens to be the subject of my new book, and so I know Mark very well, and I was thinking, well, that could be a nice ending to my book, if you'd chosen as Treasury Secretary going from Apollo. But then I thought, there's like no way. I don't even know who started servicing Mark's name. I thought it was a very good idea because Mark is basically brilliant, far smarter than Donald Trump, and by the way, richer than Donald Trump. So those are probably two huge strikes against him. And he doesn't look like a Treasury Secretary, so that's 3 strikes against him. And he wasn't loyal, really like obsequiously loyal, like Scott Bessent was. So that's 4 strikes against him. And yet, I thought maybe, because of what you were just saying, Donald would care more about, reassuring Wall Street and getting the vote of Wall Street and when the market went up yesterday like 500 points, I emailed Mark. I said, "Is this because of you getting it, or because there's something else?" And he said, "No, I don't think it's because I'm getting it." So, and he didn't get it, which was too bad. But Donald does care about the market going up. But again, the market went up far more under Joe Biden, like quantum exponentially more than it did under Donald Trump, and yet, so I don't know, but yet apparently Biden's economy was a disaster and the market was horrible and everything that he did was despicable, and the election was rigged until Donald won, and then it was a beautiful election. And the economy is also suddenly a beautiful economy, and the stock market is going up because everybody anticipated that I would win. So I don't know what to tell you, but I mean, look, Scott Bessant is not Pete Hegseth, and is not it's not even little Marco. He's not even the new Matt Gates. So
well, he was also a principal investment advisor to the
George
great
Soros.
bête noire of the right, George Soros.
Yeah, I don't really understand it, but he also went to Yale and was the editor of the Yale Daily News, and was head of Yale Secret Society. So maybe
those are Treasury Secretary.
Those are definitely qualifications for Treasury Secretary.
So another, you speak of the market having gone up, I don't know, 7% or something since Trump was elected, but crypto, Bitcoin. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it has always seemed to me to have no essential function, no real use if you're not a criminal, yet it went up. Yes, Bitcoin went up. Has gone up almost 50% since Donald Trump was elected. Now, why is that? I mean, to me, it has seemed like a scammy, tulip bulb of the 21st century situation. So what makes other than it being this speculative thing that, it's gone up, therefore it's valuable, I'll buy more. But what are people betting on that, Donald Trump is going to be president? Crypto. Explain that to me, Bill.
Yeah, this is another difficult one, but true believers are, you cannot possibly persuade them off of this phenomenon, and I'm sure that's probably what it was like with tulip bulbs in the 1600s in Amsterdam. It was, the Internet 1.0 stocks in 1998 and 99 and part of 2000 were like this too. You just could not persuade people that this wasn't just pure speculation. And a documentary film that I've been working on for more than 2 years about crypto is hopefully going to come out soon. So I've been studying this pretty carefully for a long time. Talked to all the big, Bitcoin maximalists, as they're called,
including the one in prison, or
including the one in prison.
Yeah.
I interviewed Sam Bankman-Fried for 90 minutes for this documentary before, when he was on top of the world, when he was worth 30 billion. And then I'm still the only person to go visit him in prison in Brooklyn at the Metropolitan Detention Center. I went and saw him in May for an hour. Wasn't I got filmed after I came out, but I not only couldn't bring anything in with me. In fact, they told me I was wearing the wrong pants. They weren't going to let me in because I was wearing the wrong color pants, but they took pity on me because I didn't know that I was wearing the wrong colored pants. But I couldn't bring a pencil or paper or a tape recorder or a pen or anything. So I've written about it for Puck a little bit. I had to, I'm not young anymore, so I had to really focus my mind on what he was saying and try to remember it. But basically Bitcoin, to me, and I've studied it, and it's a fascinating idea. The way it all came about was fascinating, and definitely came about as a result of the 2008 financial crisis and the loss of trust in financial institutions, which seems to have been largely restored. But Bitcoin is like taken off, obviously. First of all, the genius of it is that there was only 21 million Bitcoins created. And so that's it. And so, it's not like, fiat currency, which you just go to the printing press and print more. So people, play that up as some sort of great hedge against inflation because, there's only a finite number of Bitcoins, and therefore, once they've been all mined, that's it, and there's never going to be another. And there's all these myths about it, but basically you can't do anything with Bitcoin. If you want to buy coffee at Starbucks, you put your credit card down on the little machine, and you bought it in about 3 seconds. You can pay cash, and that's about 1 second if you use the correct amount. If you want to use Bitcoin, it'll be like 20 minutes. So that's if you're lucky, and if they accept it. So it's only a way to speculate, and so right now we're in the greater fool part of the curve. And so as long as you find somebody else, and they've hyped it up so much, and I interviewed this guy, Michael Saylor, who's head of a software company called MicroStrategy. It's a public company. Has nothing to do with, it's a very poor quality enterprise software company, but he's made this huge bet on Bitcoin. He's borrowed billions of dollars and invested those billions of dollars in buying Bitcoin, and he's got like massive profit. Like the company's now worth $100 billion because of his Bitcoin profit, which, by the way, a year ago was Bitcoin losses. So, but now his average price of what he's paid for Bitcoin is much less than where Bitcoin is trading now. So he looks like a genius, and he's on CNBC, and everybody thinks he's a genius, and he's a maximalist, and he talks about this. But basically, all you can do is find a greater fool.
Yeah.
You find the greater fool, they buy it for more than you paid for it, and now, you get your Lambo, and everybody's happy, and, aren't we so brilliant, and this is the greatest thing. But you can't do anything with Bitcoin.
No, businesses that actually make and do things that aren't financial, that aren't speculative like that. Like, I think of, in the case of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I also wrote a piece about not long ago. But I bought cocaine once in college. I don't know if you read this piece.
I did.
He was my dealer, and the only reason I wrote about this is because I published this the day after he endorsed Donald Trump, who represents everything he has professed and his father and uncle professed to support.
On this day of all days.
Yes, on this day of all days. About the environment, about civil rights, on and on and on. Because he thought he would enable Bobby Kennedy to make America healthy again. And, of course, that includes getting his skepticism toward vaccines becoming U.S. federal policy. But, so, given the people that you know and have written about who run pharmaceutical companies, who perhaps are in the construction business, who are in the hospitality industry, in the hospitality industry I'm thinking more of deportation, but in the Bobby Kennedy case, food companies, agribusiness, pharma, the prospect of this guy being in charge of governing pharmaceuticals there must be some pushback building, no, among people who can get to the Trump administration and say, no, don't let this nut mess up our medical system even worse than it's already messed up.
Well, the stocks of some of these companies, pharmaceutical companies that make vaccines, have already tumbled as in the wake of this appointment. I don't know if, can Bobby Kennedy get confirmed? He's committed every felony I think that you can commit short of murder, and somehow he's stayed out of jail. He's a drug dealer, he's a heroin addict, sexual assault charges. It's quite amazing. I think that Trump likes him because he's done worse things than Donald Trump has.
Yeah.
And so...
and because he's central casting and he's a Kennedy. And that, that's the show.
And there'd be no other Kennedy that would ever be in his cabinet, that's for sure. And, I'm sure his father and uncle are literally rolling over in their graves.
But, so mass deportation, which I happen to believe is not going to happen on a mass level, and people need to remember that Barack Obama, for instance, deported many more undocumented immigrants than say, Donald Trump did in his first term. And unlike Donald Trump, when he was deporting undocumented migrants, focused and prioritized criminals. 90-something% of Obama's removals, as they're actually called, not deportations, were criminals, whereas only something like 40% of Trump's were. So that gives you a sense of the folly and of this. It seems to me he'll make a big deal of it, and he'll it's something he wants to do, and he can make good on, but will he? In addition to everything else, it seems to me, if you're in, say, agribusiness food, and you need your strawberries and every other fruit and vegetable picked in the United States, if you're in the hospitality industry and you need your restaurant and workers and your hotel maids to come to work, we could go on and on. Construction. I mean, there are lots of, of the 11 million undocumented aliens, 8 million of them are in the labor force, and those are the caregiving. Those are the worlds in which they are obviously essential workers. Aren't your friends, that I'm using ironically, the people you cover, the people you report on, they can't look forward to suddenly losing millions of these low-wage, hard-working employees.
Yeah, and there was a story on NPR tonight about in Texas where they're getting very concerned because so many of the workers in Texas are undocumented workers, and if Trump exits them or deports them or whatever the word is, there's going to be a problem for the Texas economy, which is one of the biggest economies in the country. So I suspect there's I don't know. I can't speculate on this guy anymore. I'm tired of speculating on this guy, what he'll do or what he won't do, or he'll moderate some of his views. I don't know anymore whether he's capable of moderating his views or whether he's just going to go for it. I'm not even convinced, by the way, that this is his final rodeo. I'm talking to my friends about this. I think he's going to figure out a way to repeal the 22nd Amendment or make it not apply to him, or he's already sort of hinted that this is it for me. Unless you guys think I'm doing such a great job that I'm going to stick around. We'll find a way to stick around. So I'm not sure this is his last rodeo, and I don't know whether was he going to build the wall, have Mexico pay for it? I mean, one of the most heinous things that I thought, among the many heinous things, was there was this immigration bill that had been bipartisanly negotiated, and somehow he blocked it. This private citizen figured out a way to block it. I mean, this guy is the luckiest guy on the face of the earth. I mean, he was supposed to be sentenced next week after having been convicted of crimes, and now, well, we don't know when that sentence is going to be. Maybe after he leaves office, when he's 81. If he leaves office.
In his lizard brain brilliance, in his, ordering the Republicans to not pass that bipartisan bill that one of the most conservative senators in the United States was primarily responsible for drafting, gave them this issue up until November 5th, and may have gotten.
Well, that's so craven, Kurt. It's so craven.
Yes, Bill.
And so, I mean, this is a real problem that there was presumably a solution to. I'm not an immigration expert, so I don't know whether it was a good solution, but at least it was a solution, a bipartisan reached, and then he decided he wanted it to be an issue and didn't want it to be solved, and so these, in his craven way, and then the Republican senators in their craven way, deep sixed the bill, and so now it remains a problem which he's going to solve. He's going to solve that tomorrow. He's going to solve the Ukraine war tomorrow. He's going to solve the Middle East tomorrow. He's got a lot of things he's going to do tomorrow, and he's going to be, and the market's going to go up, and the economy's great, and the election was no longer rigged, and I've got this Star Wars cast of characters who's going to be the best group of cabinet ministers we've ever had in this country, and it's just fabulous. I'm feeling so much better about this country now
I bet you're looking forward to
2 weeks ago.
those 60% tariffs on everything from every country, right?
And I'm looking forward to the retribution that he claims he's going to take against journalists he doesn't like.
Yeah. Hey,
so this might be our
don't
last
joke
public
about
appearance.
that. We should take questions from the audience before it gets any later than it is.
It seems to me that the thing that people are possibly missing about the Trump administration is that the level of cronyism leads you to ask, will they not engage in front-running their policies with all their buddies, which will create billions and billions and billions of dollars of wealth among their cronies by trading ahead of the policy announcements that they make, whether it be through Switzerland or Cayman or wherever. And strawman traders, they will create increasing amounts of wealth that are very difficult to overcome going forward because of the influence that money upon our politics and global politics.
Yeah.
Not only do I think you're right, I think, Congress already kind of does that because they're not subject to, those insider trading laws. And I think all you need to know on this front is, Trump Media and Technology Company, DJT, the publicly traded company, incredibly. I mean, we've sunk so low that you can have a guy who's president of the United States own 60% of this meme stock that has no revenue and huge losses. He owns 60% of it, and his 60% stake is worth like $4 billion. The company is worth $7 billion, and there's nothing to it other than Donald Trump's tweets or whatever they are, on Truth Social. And that a lot of people have written me believing that stock has been totally manipulated by, Elon Musk could be buying that stock up just so that Donald Trump is worth $4 or $5 billion. It's great. I mean, it's like a gift to him. He put up no money. He writes these stupid tweets or whatever they are on Truth Social. Truths! Exclamation points, capital letters. And as a result, there's a company that is worth $7 billion, of which he owns 60% of.
But to the point of front run, he's telling their buddies like, we're going to do this, so invest in these stocks. That of course, the synergy of such a corrupt administration, where you then have let's say, an attorney general and U.S. attorneys all over the country who are less inclined to say prosecute those crimes if they constitute crimes, could be part of that same extraordinary kleptocratic 4 years.
I just want to bring this around a little bit. The title of this is what's going to happen to our economy and our country. I'm a small business owner, and I want to know what's going to happen if these tariffs go into effect, and what's that going to do to the stock market and my little IRAs that are sitting out there. That's what I really want to know.
If I had the answers to what was going to happen to this, if I had tomorrow's Wall Street Journal today, I could buy 100 of these new auditoriums for everybody. I can't predict what's going to happen. I think that Trump, again, I don't know what's between the guy's ears. I can't believe he's going to put tariffs like he's talking about, because that's a tax on people who buy the goods and services that have been tariffed. Now he says, it's just a negotiating tactic with our foreign adversaries or our trade partners. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it is a negotiating tactic, and maybe as a result of fear of him putting tariffs on, they'll moderate something that he doesn't like. But of course, what's really going to happen is if he puts 40 to 60% tariffs on imported goods, then Mexico's going to put tariffs on our goods, and it's going to be just like this vicious cycle, which is going to be highly inflationary and is going to tank the economy. And when the economy tanks, the stock market tanks, and your 401k loses value. On the other hand, when Donald Trump took over, the stock market was, rocketed up to like 18,000 on the Dow. Now it's 44,000. So I mean, I guess we could all, we'd all be okay if our 401ks went down a little bit. But I don't. All these economists, these Nobel Prize-winning economists, have said that his economic proposals are inflationary and will be bad for the economy, and Kamala Harris's proposals would have been better, and the American people elected Donald Trump, so I don't know what to tell you.
I don't need a mic.
Yeah, you talk about not knowing what's going on inside Donald Trump's brain. Of course, nobody does, but it seems to me there is some consistency. I mean, he plays to a particular base, and he doesn't care about results for that base. He doesn't care about what he actually accomplishes, and he doesn't care about people who are not in that base, but he speaks to that base, and it seems to me that that's what's consistent. In order to get his strength and his power, he'll say things like, he'll point at Matt Gaetz, he'll say the dogs and the cats are being eaten. We all think that's nonsense, but his base loves it. And it seems to me the same thing about deportations. You can say we're going to send millions of them out of the country, and if it starts to look bad, they actually started doing that, and it looked bad, and it was bad publicity, and his base didn't like it, he'd drop it the next day. If his base keeps eating it up, he will keep doing it. I don't think he cares about results in the least, but he has his finger on the pulse of that base, and he knows. He went on with abortion. Well, is that what is going on?
Well,
is that the consistency?
I would say, in answer to that, his base is what got him elected. The last time he got elected, we got him elected. This time he got elected. He's not, despite what Bill says, running for re-election again. He has no base toward it.
You heard it here first.
In a political sense. He doesn't have to please anyone. He has a base, which is to say the people Bill covers at Wall Street and not letting the market goes down, because that is the one clear metric of, I'm going to be blamed for the market going down or not, or crashing, or inflation going up. So I don't know. He loves his crowds, and he loves his rallies, and that part of him, that showman who just wants the adulation of the base/cult, yes. But in terms of doing things to please them, whether it's about abortion or 100% tariffs or any of the rest, we'll see. I don't think we'll see if he wants to serve that the impulses of that base. When he has nothing to get out of it except exciting them and having rallies where people are still behind him. So we'll see.
I mean, he's a masterful politician. You have to give him that. This fellow over here.
Thank you.
I don't want him to jump out the window.
Thank you. Kurt, been a fan since with you and Grace since the short-fingered Bulgarian days. One of the things that came up right as you gentlemen were coming on stage, less financial but a little more troubling to folks like myself, is that Trump appointed Russell Vought for Office of Management and Budget. This is after directly saying that Project 2025 had no role in their platform and flat out denied it. This man is now in charge of basically the inner workings of the entire federal government. Incompetence saved our lives the last 4 years that he was in power. But you get people like that, it scares me even more. Grover, whoever, remember the comment about getting government small enough to drown it in a bathtub. And any comment on Mr. Vought and Project 2025?
Mr. Vought is actually, the profile of him, 6 months ago or so, and maybe watch it both, maybe another time, maybe both, is I found the most chilling, because direct, exactly your point, of this real competence and knowledge of how the federal government works.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
no clown car.
Pardon me?
No clown car with Russell.
No. He's a I don't know, ringmaster or something. But we'll see though what the director of OMB can do in a Project 2025 sense. I don't know. I mean, similarly, he appointed a zealot, a right-wing zealot, to be head of the FCC to make sure that conservative points of view are more freely circulated, even if they're misinformation and disinformation on social media and YouTube and the rest. Well, that would be scary if the FCC had any power over those companies currently. So we'll see. I agree with you. He's a Bout, if that's how it's pronounced, is one of those, is exactly the embodiment of, this isn't just some guy who doesn't know what he's doing, who loves Donald Trump. This is a guy who is one of these, as you say, Heritage Foundation Project 2025 cells. But maybe this job that he has is not the place he can do most damage. We'll see.
Elon Musk. So amongst your circle, as you consider his ascent, his influence, his impact, what are you hearing and thinking about what that looks like as we dial it out a few months, a year or two?
Well, I think the presumption is among people I know who know him and have seen how Donald Trump works in office and in life. I think I think the betting would be on that blows up somehow within certainly calendar 2025. So we'll see. Elon Musk has tremendous power right now, and he, as opposed to say Bill Ackman, who's not going to get anything personally out of Donald Trump being elected, Elon Musk, in the old-fashioned, robber baron corruption sense, has a lot to get out of it in terms of having a privileged position for his electric vehicles and all the rest. And simply just having this guy who, for the moment, thinks he's the smartest man in the world because he's the richest man in the world.
Yeah, I explored last week in the Puck piece. This is really something to think about. The merger between X, Twitter X, which is a private company owned by Elon, and DJT, Donald Trump's, publicly traded meme stock that I was talking about before. I mean, if Elon were really smart, and he's plenty smart, he would do that merger as a way to take X public, and the combination of those two guys, in a publicly traded stock, the thing would, for no reason at all, of course, other than pure speculation, would rocket up, I'm sure, and make Donald Trump even richer. So if Elon Musk can be responsible for single-handedly, making Donald Trump's network or stake in DJT go from $4 billion to $14 billion, I mean, talk about entrenching yourself in Donald Trump world forever and ever. That would do it. Even if Donald got tired of Elon Musk stealing the spotlight from him, which I'm sure he's going to get tired of pretty soon. The debt is a huge problem. The deficit is a huge problem. I'm not an economist, but we're quickly becoming an over-leveraged economy. Not one of the more leveraged countries in the world now. Japan is the most leveraged. Lebanon is up there, and we're getting up there too. It's gotten worse. I mean, Donald Trump added $7 trillion to the national debt, and Biden, I don't think he was more like $4 or so trillion. So Donald Trump said it was a perfect economy when he was managing it, which was more fiction that he promulgated, and everybody either forgot or believed, or when he says it. So I don't think he's going to do anything about the national debt. We're able to print money. We're the world's currency, and so again, that gets back to why is Bitcoin so popular among certain groups of people, because it's not fiat currency. You can't just make more of it, even though you can't do anything with it. People think it's some sort of hedge against inflation. And it might be. we've lost all fiscal discipline in this country. I'm not sure why that happened. I mean, I thought the Republicans were the party of fiscal discipline. That apparently is no longer the case.
Well, the Republicans were the party of lip service to fiscal discipline, and 40 years ago, when they decided that their central, absolute bit of dogma and orthodoxy is no new taxes. We cannot raise taxes. Well, if you're going to not raise taxes, and despite Elon Musk is ridiculously saying he's going to cut $2 trillion from our $6.5 trillion federal budget, without raising taxes, especially taxes on the wealthy, which are about to go down, you're only going to, maybe Trump can exceed his record of the first term of adding $8 trillion in debt. So, it was the last time we actually balanced the budget, of course, it was a Democratic president. This history of Democratic administrations making up for the fiscal messes of the Republicans wrought is now an established thing for most of my lifetime. So.
And don't forget that Donald Trump, 6 of his companies went into bankruptcy. So he's very familiar with bankruptcy and how to benefit from bankruptcy, and he has no personal fiscal discipline. He got a $400 million stake from his father, and what's the fastest way to make $1 billion? I guess is to start with 10 million. I mean, that's what Donald Trump's philosophy of life is, and he's turned it into presidency twice.
We have one more question.
Hello, up here. Hey, just a quick question about X and Elon Musk. This is very loud. So I feel like Elon bought X, and at the moment that he bought it, you talked about putting Donald Trump back on the platform, and now he edits the platform, and there's this new media coming out called Blue Sky. So my question to you as writers is, what is your thought of the movement? Because I really, we could sit here and talk about Donald Trump and all of this, but what is the next steps and the hope and the change for the future? Do you think new platforms will arise? Because if the media becomes controlled the way it is now, with this algorithm that can't change, then we're never going to reach people, and it's only going to be one voice and one story.
Yeah, well, my friend Kara Swisher calls X a Nazi porn bar. She's right about that. There's 600 million users on Twitter. There's 250 million on Threads. This week I guess there's maybe 15 or 16 million on Blue Sky. I personally can't stand X, but I do look at it because I'm a journalist, and if you want to figure out what's going on quickly, you can see it, and as long as you take it with like a cone of salt and can parse through, who's saying something, you can get information quickly. The problem is, of course, I don't even recognize, the people I want to follow, I don't get to see what they do. I just get to see what this algorithm churns up and puts in my my way every day, and it's mostly Elon stuff, which I've now blocked him so that I don't have to deal with him anymore. But he's got 200 million followers, so that's a cesspool. The others just really haven't caught on. I don't know.
But everything starts small. The growth of Blue Sky in the last 6 months, and especially the last month, is extraordinary. But also, X, Threads, Blue Sky, not denying their power in certain ways, important ways, but they are not. They're not where it all happens. The people who are on them believe that that's it and that's the world, but people get their information in all kinds of ways. And I'm not suggesting that our media sphere and information world is anything but unhealthy in many, many, many horrible, problematic ways. But what Elon Musk is doing to X, which is destroying, you know, a reasonable business. You know, I mean, if he's going to turn it into, as Bill is suggesting, some version of Truth Social, well, that as Bill said, that business loses tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars actually last year. The reality check of the marketplace will sooner or later show the folly of that, because, you know, and X he's turned into a terrible business, but because he has a profitable business and then another business that we didn't even talk about in Elon Musk's case controls the space program in the United States and most communication satellites that we operate and that the US and that the whole world operates. Those positions of power are extraordinary and worthy of a whole other hour-and-a-half conversation we don't have the time for. But thank you so much for coming. And
Thank you.
I'm